Hi, welcome to Heal Body, Mind and Spirit. My name is Dermot Farrell, and in this video we're going to talk about coping with depression, which is a really important topic considering that 5% of the world's population at any one time are suffering from depression. So what can we do about it? How can we cope better and make the best of things? Hi, coping with depression. It's a very big topic and it's something you don't hear so much about, and that's why I'm making a video about it, because really if you are suffering from depression or know someone who is suffering from depression, then coping strategies are really important. And I feel this is a very important subject because 5% of the world's population at any one time, about 350 million people according to the WHO, the World Health Organization, are suffering from depression. Statistics in America suggest over 6% are suffering from depression. So approximately 1 in 20 people are suffering from depression. If you're living in a neighborhood with 1,000 people, that means 50 of your neighbors at any one time are suffering from depression, and you may not know about it. So I feel it's a really important topic, and it's also a personal topic for me, because back around 1992-93 I suffered from very severe depression for about 18 months. So, you know, people used to say things, some people still say this, but it used to be very popular years ago, say something like, I feel depressed, and the other person will say, well, pull yourself together. I mean, for anybody, when a lot of people think of depression, you think, oh, he's feeling a bit down. Depression, if you're suffering from depression, you'll know this, it's not feeling down. It's feeling that the bottom has dropped out of your world. You're feeling hopeless. You're feeling really depressed. Possibly you're feeling suicidal. You have a lot of negative feelings and thoughts, and it just feels awful. And we've really got to put a lot of effort in this world into trying to fix this problem. And personally, I think 5% of the world's population suffering from depression tells us there's something missing in society, that we have so many people feeling depressed. And we've got to do a better job of helping people cope, but not just helping people cope. We've got to do a better job of helping people not get depressed in the first place. Now, part of my educational background, I spent about 5 years studying psychoanalysis. Not that I'm a psychoanalyst or a psychotherapist or even a psychologist. I simply studied it for about 5 years. So I have a good overview. I also did some counseling, I did some therapy, and I have a good overview, and that's what I'm going to give you a little bit of insight here in this video, okay? So if we're thinking of coping with depression, the first thing we need to do is take a quick look at why are people depressed, what is depression, okay? It's a very complex topic, and there's lots of different variations here, but I give you the core as I would see it, okay? Some psychiatrists think it's a chemical imbalance in the brain. I don't think that. I think that what happens is, if you're thinking this way, it will cause an imbalance. So an imbalance in your brain will make you depressed, but being depressed will make your brain imbalanced, okay? So really, the major cause is actually a thing called the superego, or the inner critic. So why is this? Okay, human beings are complex. Our modern society is complex. A young child, if you look at a young child, the young child is happy 1 minute and very unhappy another minute. What's happening here? The young child is a bundle of drives and thoughts and feelings, okay? So what I mean by drives, the major drives human beings have is the survival drive, the drive to survive, the aggressive drive, which is the drive to be aggressive, which is tied into the survival drive, but it's also separate, and then the sex drive, the drive to reproduce. So it's all survival instinct, basically. I want to survive, I'm aggressive to make sure I keep surviving, and I want to reproduce. But which comes across to us as a desire for having sex. Now, that's basically the young child. They have these drives and thoughts and feelings, which is fine, because they're young babies, and you know, 1 minute they're angry, another minute they're very happy, okay? But along the way, the personality has to grow and develop, and we live in a society. So Mother Nature has evolved in the human mind a repressive activity, okay, whereby we repress these thoughts and feelings. And think about this, is very practical and very necessary. For example, you meet a sexually attractive member of the opposite sex. Well, your feeling unconsciously is, I want to go over and actively start involving myself with that person. It's totally inappropriate. It could be your teacher, it could be your sister, it could be your friend, it could be a lady on the street. You can't just go over and start, or over to him and start making sexual advances. This is very impractical. And this is one of the things which we see when people get drunk. They do silly things that you wouldn't do normally and think, oh, I was drunk. Oh, it's beer goggles. Well, actually, if you find somebody attractive when you're drinking beer and you say it's beer goggles, I don't feel attracted to them now, I'm not drinking beer, actually, deep down, you're always attracted to them. Because there's a part of you that's attracted to all sorts of people and situations, and that's the sex drive. And it really, we have to put it into its box, or we're doing a lot of inappropriate things. Also aggression. If somebody cuts me up, when I'm driving my car or my bike, I feel angry. I feel like bashing their head in just for a second, and then I put it back. My actual desire is to bash their head in, but obviously that's not a good idea. Okay, that's not a very practical thing. I think a nice fictional example of this is the Incredible Hulk character. If you ever watched any of those Avengers movies or Incredible Hulk movie, I think it's very good because you have this David Banner, civilized, intelligent, articulate man, sensitive, charming gentleman, but when he gets angry, a big green monster comes out. And that's kind of symbolic. But what's missing from the show, and the show, you know, he's a gentle giant really, he only hits the bad guy. But in reality, what actually happened is this gentle giant will, you know, somebody cuts you up in traffic, the not so gentle green giant will actually rip their head off. So it's really not PC, this aggressive drive, this sexual drive. In order to fit in society, we have to repress these things. But here's where the problem lies. You've repressed these things, you don't see them. They're still there. You're still feeling those sexual thoughts. You're still feeling those aggressive thoughts. And also a whole bunch of other stuff. Thoughts can be like things like not liking somebody. People, I think, it's got Asperger's syndrome. They just shout out. You know, they'll say something very nasty to somebody. These are the sort of things that are going on. What happens with Asperger's syndrome is a person will just say whatever's going through their head. They can't help themselves. That's an example of it's bypassing the repressive facility. So again, your boss comes and says something, you don't like him. Well, you know, you're repressing your desire to tell your boss what you think of him. So it's also your thoughts. And it's also your feelings. You know, when you're in love, for example, you might literally be really drowning in love for that person. I'd be crying, weeping, and hugging and kissing. That can also be inappropriate. So a parent and child's like, I love you, kid. But actually you really love them, and it's very emotional. So you can't be dripping with emotion all the time. Another example of a drug, a very popular drug, I don't know if people take it so much these days, years ago, it's called ecstasy pills. And people get all lovey-dovey because it's got this thing in it called MDMA, which used to be given years ago as a trial drug to help people who are having relational difficulties, believe it or not. It will make you feel very affectionate towards people, which again, you're just lifting the lid on the feeling. So I don't want to just come across that we're repressing everything that's nasty. You're just repressing everything. You're repressing your aggressive feelings, your sexual feelings, also your feelings of love, and also your thoughts. Sometimes your thoughts are not acceptable to your belief system for one reason or another. So you might come from a family whereby they're telling you be a good boy, be a good girl, but you want to do something, but you want to repress it. So I'll give you a very nice gentle example. The boy or girl from a family of doctors, and he has to become a doctor, and he accepts it, that's just the way it is, but he starts getting health problems, or he starts feeling depressed. Well, it turns out that he doesn't want it. His thoughts are, his feelings are, I don't like medicine. Okay, that's a very common kind of example, okay? So it can be, and there's nothing wrong with not wanting to become a doctor, okay? That's a thought. So it's a healthy thought, there's nothing wrong with it, but in some people's case they will repress that thought, and instead they study medicine and get depressed, okay, as an example. So it's our drives, sex drive, aggressive drive, survival instinct. Survival instinct is the thing that makes you feel like you're scared, I don't want to die. That's survival instinct, by the way. Your thoughts and your feelings, and it can be positive as well as negative, but to some degree we have to repress them. Now the thing with being repressed is, well, for a start, it numbs your existence, and there's a lot of repression. A person gets very numbed in existence, and this can also be a reason why antidepressants, sometimes some antidepressants and some anti-anxiety drugs make people feel very numb. They're repressing too much. Okay, just an aside. So, how to enforce this? You're repressing the thoughts and feelings, but they're still there. It's like, you know, they have this saying of the skeletons in the closet, the skeletons in the closet. Well, they are, and the skeletons in the closet are banging the door. So your mind has something to put them back into their box. And it's a policeman. And policemen are usually good and usually serve. But that policeman is the inner critic, otherwise known in psychoanalytical terms as the superego. And it's the thing that makes us have a conscience and make us feel, I don't want to be bad, I want to be good. And we pick up the programming for this inner policeman is that there's things our parents and authority figures said to us when we were young children. Things like, be a good boy, be a good girl, don't be nasty, be polite, be nice. And a lot of it's good. And it helps us in society, you know, be polite and be respectful to others and stuff like that. But you know, just like the motto of police forces all over the world is to serve and to protect. And if a policeman's doing good, then it's fine. If it's stopping you from hugging somebody or beating somebody or saying something inappropriate, it's wonderful. But sometimes, in some people's cases, probably about 1 in 20, at any one time, it's too much. And it becomes a police state. You know, you try and stand up and say something, the guy comes on with a big baton and beats you over the head. The superego can be like that in some cases, particularly if a person was raised in a very critical environment. Some people are raised in a very critical environment. This is where we have to prevent depression in the first place by educating authority figures in society and parents in particular. Be very careful what you say to your kid. You know, try to support your children. Don't just criticize them all the time, because after a while they end up with that inner critic, and some people, no matter what they do, they feel like a failure because inside you're not worthy. You're not good enough. You can't do it. You know, the person could be the richest, most successful person in the world and be very unhappy because his inner critic is just jumping on them every day. Okay? So where does this fit in with depression? Okay, in the psychoanalytical theory of depression, the inner critic or superego is beating you up. Now, it might be on a pre-conscious level. In other words, you feel bad, you don't know why. But ultimately, there's this judgmental aspect of yourself saying you are unworthy and you are bad and you feel bad. Just think about it. If you're depressed or anybody's depressed, talk about them. They don't have any self-esteem and they feel very unworthy and they feel very bad. And intellectually you might know I'm a good person, but they feel bad. Okay, so this is the thing with depression. This is what causes depression, is this inner critic gone mad. And, you know, maybe it's just one of these evolutionary things that's gone too much the other way. I mean, another aspect of this, I see the survival drive can cause a lot of problems too, whereby we hold ourselves back from doing things because our survival drive is, no, don't do it. Don't go for that job interview. Don't speak in public. Don't stand up for yourself. You might get damaged or hurt. Now, because the thing with the survival drive is, you know, animals tend to avoid anything new or novel because it might hurt you, which will help you survive in the fields and stuff. But we're human beings in a complex society. We have to integrate at a high level. But the survival instinct can hold us back. So many of our instincts and many of our kind of programmings in the underground inside our unconscious mind are wonderful, but they're causing us problems in our complex society. And the superego is one of them. I think long-term wise we've got to work more and more on nurturing each other and working towards a more positive, upbeat society. This will help prevent depression. But how do you cope with depression? You have some ideas what cause it. How do we cope? Well, there's a few things we can do. I'll check my little list here so I don't miss them out here. Okay, the first thing, and this is very important, is to realize you have a problem. Don't deny it. You have a problem. The second thing is, you are not alone. Okay? 1 in 20 people. If you're in an office, say, and there's 500 people working in that office, chances are 10 of them are depressed right now. But people don't walk down the streets and say, hey, everybody, I'm depressed. They usually don't. Actually, better if they did. So don't stick your head in the sand. Realize that you're depressed and you must do something about it. I come from a culture, I come from Ireland, and Ireland is famous for people not talking about their feelings. And we also have a very, very high rate of suicide in young people, particularly young men. And I'm convinced it's because they don't know how to talk about things. And it's always the case. Externally, they're the loveliest, nicest guy, and everybody loves them. And then they go off and kill themselves. Nobody can understand why. That's an example of, you know, people feeling that they can't. And I know I was severely depressed around 1992, 93, around that time. And I never told anybody, nor did I take any antidepressants. I didn't tell anybody. So I just toughed it out, but looking back, it was a silly thing to do. But at the time, I felt I couldn't speak. I didn't have a voice. I didn't have the ability to speak about how I felt or thought about anything. And I literally couldn't tell anybody, even though I was dying inside. And the way it was working for me was, I'd be fine when I woke up, but every afternoon it was like suddenly lights out and like, ugh. I mean, literally, you know, kind of sometimes panic attack for, you know, hours and hours kind of thing. I just like, I can't take it anymore. And I wouldn't tell anybody. I just go in my room and they come out, or go for a walk. So the way I approached it was very tough, but I don't recommend it. But I got through it, you know, and that's a funny thing. You know, what worked for me, actually, I got angry because my thought always was, it's going to come back. I'll never be free of this thing. And then one day I got angry. I said, I'm having enough of this. Screw it. I'm going to continue. I don't care how I feel. You know, funny thing was, when I stopped caring about how I feel, I said, screw it. I'm not going to give in to this thing. I'm going to continue on, even if I feel rubbish. Because what's the worst you can do? And this is a very important factor. You can try this one. It doesn't matter how I feel. I'm not going to have a heart attack and die because I don't feel good about myself. And you know, once you face that phantom, that shadow as it were, say, I'm going to continue. I don't care how I feel. I just ignore my emotions. I'll continue. It took the thing out of it, because it was that threat, that feeling, oh my God, every day I get this thing. Is this it for life? And that you know, it's always when we worry about something that hasn't happened yet, you can't cope with it. Well, when you just ignore it, you can get on with it. So that worked for me. Although for about the next 6 or 7 years, I had, you know, it's suddenly cleared, but I had a lot of anxiety. So, you know, what happens with depression is you can't just switch it off. It's like you pull it down from being very acute to being very chronic to being kind of more kind of anxious chronic to being anxious. You can work through depression, but it can take a long time, and it's complex. And I have a couple of articles linked below. One is basically on this topic, a simple version, and I also have the more complex one, which goes into a lot more detail, but I don't want to do a video on it right now because it goes off in so many angles. I think it's out of focus. We're just going to focus on coping strategies in this video. But that's what I'm saying. Realize you have a problem. When you realize you have a problem, you can do something about it. Realize you're not alone. Okay. So what else can we do? We can work on building ourselves up, because what's the cause of depression? The cause of depression is that we feel unworthy, we feel bad, our inner critic is giving us a hard time. Give up watching the news. News is awful, just terrible. If you need to watch the news, tune into it once a week or something. It's war, terror, rampage, rape, terrible things, the world's coming to an end, everybody's terrible. Well, you don't need to hear that right now, okay? So build yourself up, read positive books, self-help books. Another article got leaked below is my review of Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, which is a great book. Old book, but great book. Really helped me back in 1994. Build yourself up and work on yourself. And be willing to go to like therapists or self-help groups or anything that will help you work yourself up. But try and start giving yourself some positive mind feed, because whatever you think is the cause, I can tell you the real cause is you feel bad about yourself. You've got to start changing how you feel about yourself. Third thing I have here is do some self-itinerary. I think everybody should do this. Now, I was studying psychoanalysis for a few years, and psychoanalysis goes too far to the other end. It'd be like years and years and years, and it can, you know, it can be too much. But what everybody does need is a self-itinerary, you know. We need to understand some stuff about ourselves. So what I'd recommend is you get a pen and a notebook or piece of paper and write out a summary of your life so far. Not like a 500-page thing, but like 3 or 4 pages, 5 pages, just to gain some perspective on your life. You know, this is my life, a little life summary. It's a good thing to do. And then look at things which are causing you pain and suffering, maybe traumas or things you feel you're missing or problems you had, and just take a bit of a look at them and try and work out in a very, you know, kind of layman kind of way. Just try and work out maybe what happened, read some books on self-development and so on, and maybe see what's happening. Like a big problem a lot of people have is they play the victim. They feel that everybody's caused their problem. They take no responsibility. And we're in a society that's kind of like that. Blame everybody else and don't take any responsibility. So, you know, you can do little exercises like that and try and get a feel for who you are, where you're at, and what your issues are, and then try and work on them. Because if you don't do any self-reflection, you can't change anything. Antidepressants, for example, are a wonderful crutch, and I think antidepressants are very useful. But they, you know, maybe 1/3 of cases they'll cure the depression, because a person just had a bit of a setback. But if you've got a problem with your inner critic, they won't really cure. You've got to do a lot of work on yourself. So the key is to take the antidepressants and do the other things to improve yourself. So do a little bit of research, find out about yourself, where you're stuck, and start working on yourself. I mean, I remember when I had depression, as I said, some things changed, and I turned the tide by facing up to it. But then I did a lot of other things. I did things like I did Gestalt group therapy, which I found really useful, which is all about tuning into your feelings and perception. I did acting therapy, which was fascinating. I did counselling, and later psychotherapy, and so on. So different things, and take up some hobbies and interest, and there's many different ways that you have to approach these things. So it begins by taking a little bit of self-knowledge. Fourth thing is seek help. Okay, take a quick look at yourself, and if you're still not feeling, you maybe do a bit of self-help. Sometimes you can just knock yourself out of these things quickly, but if it's severe or acute, maybe you're better going to your doctor, or at least going to a friend and talking to somebody. Doctors usually don't have a lot of psychological know-how. They have a lot of experience. They talk to a lot of people with mental problems, about 1 in 20 of their patients every day. So every day they're getting a couple of people a day who are telling them about stuff. So some of them are worldly wise, but most of them, if they're just a general practitioner, won't know a lot psychologically. So they tend to give you antidepressants, and the idea is that by biofeedback, that if you go on them for a few months, then you will be free of depression, come back off them. And to clarify on this, antidepressants work on your neurotransmitters, so don't go cold turkey. And a lot of people, they take them for a few weeks, feel great, come off them. That's not the way. That's why they recommend 3 to 6 months. And it's a good starting point for a lot of people. But if you take antidepressants, do stick with them for a few months and do come off them slowly, so you don't go and have a sudden rebound depression. But that's what your doctor will tend to do. Other thing you can do is talk to friends, family members, talk to a counsellor. We have a nice concept in Ireland, which is Anam Cara. Anam, A-N-A-M, Cara, C-H-A-R-A. Anam means soul, and Cara means friend. So Anam Cara, soul friend. I like that idea. It's whoever you could talk to. It could be your father, your mother, your brother, your sister, your friend, your neighbour. It could be somebody, colleague at work. If you can find somebody you can talk to and relate to, and they can give you some support, it could be a counsellor, it could be a therapist, okay? But it doesn't have to be a counsellor or therapist. Somebody in your corner, not that you should be bugging them all the time and calling them at 3 in the morning telling you have all sorts of problems, but that you can just talk to and chat to. And that can be a big way to help you as well. So do seek help. What I did was the wrong way. It's a great thing I'm still here. I might have been here. It's a foolish way I did. And, I had 18 months of severe depression, about 7 years of fairly severe anxiety after that. So 8 or 9 years of suffering. It could have been reduced to maybe 3 to 6 months of depression and a couple of years of anxiety. You know what I mean? So in hindsight, I could have handled it better, but, that's where I was, and that might be where you are too. So we have to do baby steps, okay? So what else can we do? Take antidepressants, but don't rely on them. The antidepressants, or you could do herbs. I have another video on herbs. You could try herbs first. If they don't work so well, try antidepressants. You can try antidepressants and herbs. Herbs are also crushed, not going to cure you, but they have less side effects and they can work. And also things like chamomile tea, for example, some of the mild herbs, they can be something that will help. And you need as many things that will help as possible, because they can reduce anxiety and give you a feel-good factor. So that's something you do. But always remember, they are a crutch. Your general practitioner will tend to put you on drugs and hope that after a few months things improve. But it's your health. You have to take your health into your hands. I was trying to advise you, read self-help books, go to a counsellor, go to a therapist. If one counsellor therapist doesn't do it for you, go to another counsellor therapist. In 1994, I went to a counsellor for about 3 or 4 months, and it changed my life. The guy did a fantastic job. And it got me interested in psychoanalysis. I was studying psychoanalysis for another 5 years. So powerful stuff. Okay? Remember, if one person can't help you, another person will. Don't stop until you find people who are helping you in your corner. Another thing which I think is really good is there's a guy I read some books on some years ago, a very popular healer back in the 1950s, 60s and 70s, and he died in the mid-70s, a guy called Harry Edwards from England. I thought this guy was fascinating because he could do this psychic healing, and there's no question this guy being a fraud. I mean, thousands of people that come in with terrible things, he just put the hands over a bump, they'd be standing, walking, I mean, I think a lot of those guys are frauds, but he was very genuine. I read a lot of his books, and I found his insights very good, because here was a guy who helped literally tens of thousands of people in his lifetime. And he had a lovely phrase which I thought was really good. He used to say, "This too will pass." And what I think about it, what he's saying here is this: whatever problem is, will pass. And I read the autobiography of Harry Edwards, and he had a tough life. The first 40 years or so, he had a lot of financial problems. He was fighting in the war. He had a lot of challenges beginning. And I can relate to this thing of not having money and trying to raise a family and stuff. And it's very good. So what it basically means is that everything in life, good or bad, will pass. So this too will pass, because the big thing, this is the thing that was getting me down when I was depressed, was, oh my God, forever and ever and ever going to be like this. I remember one time I knew an old lady who had depression, and she was about 70 years of age. And whenever I talked to her, I was like, oh, will it ever go away? And I was repressing this thought, by the way. My thought was to say, you're like 70 years of age, you'll be dead in another year or two, which is true, she was dead in another year or two. I didn't say it because my inner critic was working effectively at the time. But the point is, you're 70 years of age, who cares? You're going to be dead soon, who cares? The point is, you can't go around spending your life thinking, well, this problem never go away, because you're worrying about the problem. And worrying about the problem makes the problem worse. So if you are feeling depressed, or you're feeling suicidal or anxious, or whatever your problem is, this too will pass. And this really helped me, because you know something, I'd have these terrible panic attacks, and I feel like I couldn't cope, and I can't take it anymore, and all this sort of stuff. And when I started getting this thought, I hadn't read Harry Edwards for another 20 years, by the way. This is back in the early 90s. I read Harry Edwards maybe 10, 15 years later, late 2008, 9, 10, around that time. But I realised, something, I can only feel a panic for so long. I can only feel depressed for so long. You can't feel depressed 24 hours a day. Think of it, okay? You can't feel depressed 24 hours a day. Only for a certain amount of time. Because it doesn't matter what feeling you have, it can only last so long. You can only feel ecstatic for so long. The nervous system of the human person, the human being, can only make you feel bad for so long, or good for so long, or high or low, whatever it is. Everything comes and everything goes. Okay? Nothing can stay eternally. So if you're feeling really bad today, whatever your problem is, you got depression or anxiety or your addictions or God knows whatever thing is driving you nuts, hang on there, because it will pass within a few minutes or a few hours. It will pass. And that will give you power when you realize it will pass. Okay, this too will pass. And with that, when you go through that experience a few times, eventually you'll start realizing, hey, this whole problem will eventually pass. And lots of other problems will pass. And it will give you a metaphorical understanding of life, which will make you more capable of coping with other things. It's also one of the reasons why more young people commit suicide than older people, because the older person realizes on some level this too will pass, but the younger person can't imagine it ever passing. Okay, so very important, this too will pass. And the final point on this, the final 8th coping strategy I'm going to give you today, is connect with your higher power. Whether you believe in God, or whether you just believe in a higher self, or you just believe that there's something beyond. Okay. One of the very useful things that this counsellor that I met in '94, he gave me some books to read. One was Feel the Fear to Do It Anyway. Another was a book on the Alcoholics Anonymous. I think I wasn't an alcoholic, by the way. But why was he giving me these books? Because the 12-step path that they have in the Alcoholics Anonymous. What's really nice about it is this thing of taking responsibility and coping day by day and seeking help from my higher power. So whether it's God or a higher power, I want to clarify that, because I know some of you guys out there might believe in God, which is fine. But try and realize that there's more than just me, and there's more than just this society we're living in. That there is something beyond this, there is something. So, we don't have to cope with everything on our own. This is a very important thing where we usually fall down. We feel we have to do everything ourselves. And it's probably the single biggest thing I've seen over the years in meeting various people, is people feeling that they have to cope with everything on their own, okay? You don't have to cope with everything. You can get people to help you in. So realize that. And I would certainly say for anybody who believes in God or higher power, try and give this problem to God, okay? Or your higher power. Please help me. I cannot do this my own, okay? There's that nice picture you might have seen. They had this thing of the footsteps in the sand. You got one set of footsteps, and then there's two steps, and then one step again. It's a famous kind of Christian painting thing. But basically, a guy talks to Jesus, and Jesus says, when was there two sets of footsteps, and when was there one step? And it's basically, some of the times it's two step and we're walking together, and sometimes one and I was carrying you and stuff like that. So it's like that concept that God is actually with you, but you don't realize God is with you. So God is always with you, or if you want to think of it, your higher power is always with you. You do not have to cope with everything on your own. And it's this thing, when we think we have to do it all ourselves, it becomes an impossible burden to bear. We don't. Our family, our friends, society itself, and of course God can also help carry us and help us. It's not a journey we have to take alone. So very quick, I'm going to use my little sheet here because it's hard to remember everything. Number one, realize you're not alone. Tip number one. And part two of that, 1 in 20 people is in the same boat as you right now. Tip number two, work on building yourself up, because your problem is your inner critic. Number three, do some self-itinerary so you can see what the problem is and start working on improving things. Tip number four, seek help. Anam Cara, soul friend. Go to doctor maybe. Tip number five, take antidepressants or herbs antidepressants. Take something, do something. Tip number six, work on moving away from taking whatever that crutch is. Go to counseling, therapy, take up a hobby, change your life, whatever it is, do it. Number seven, realize this too will pass. If you're having a tough time, remember, it's an emotion, it's a thought, it will pass. Hang in there, hang in there. I love that. Harry Edwards said, this too will pass. I say, hang in there. And number eight is give it over to your higher power, to God. You must help me, God. Because when we say, God help me, the grace of God comes into us. Grace of God is always waiting, okay? The grace of God will come and help us when we ask. But God gives us freedom, and freedom is, you don't ask, I don't give. You ask, I will give. God will help. So these are just my little 8 tips here today. For coping with depression, for more, you got that on the blog down below, plus a more complicated article as well on different esoteric ideas. Hope you like that, hope you find it helpful. It's something we have to work on in society. Like I said, I think if we work more on this as a society, we can prevent more people getting depressed in the first place. But these are the 8 tips I'm giving you today. Try a few of them, they will definitely help, and you can get through this, or your family member, you can give them some of this advice as well. They can get through it, okay? This too will pass, and things will improve, okay? Thanks for calling in, like the video, subscribe, and have a great day.